Welcome to Fearless, Do More. In this episode, Gill sits down with Michaela Reaney, co-founder of Opportunity Global and organiser of TEDx Teesside.
I see too many organisations still brushing things under the carpet, hoping it will go away. But the poison of the patriarch is back with a vengeance. And we need to be really, really thoughtful in how, as leaders, we're showing up. All I had in the back of my head was 13-year-old Michaela growing up in Middlesbrough, who would have loved the opportunity to have gone to something like that. If I could create something that would have really inspired me at that age, right the way through to the age I am now, I felt like we could connect with people in that same way. But I was like, no, why not? Why can't people in Teesside have this same exposure, this same opportunity to share their stories, share their ideas? And I think too often, our regional towns in particular do get left behind.
Hi, Michaela. Welcome to the podcast. It's lovely to have you here today. I don't really know where to start because you have so many things on your CV of life that we could talk about. It's quite difficult to sort of pick one. So let's pick the one that I first came across you.
Yeah.
Which was we both attended a session around DD&I.
Oh, yes,
and
we
you
did.
were
Gosh,
sort
I
of
forgot about that.
facilitating that, and it was quite in the early days of the D&I, and
Yeah.
people were finding their way, and that was through your business Opportunity Global.
Yes.
That you were doing that. So tell us first of all a bit about Opportunity Global.
Fabulous. Yes, I forgot that's how we actually met, Jill. Gosh, that was a while ago, wasn't it? So my big passion in life is around learning and curiosity. So I went down this journey of setting up businesses in the learning and development space. That's always been my kind of real passion. And I've been involved in learning and development in different guises for about 17 years now. So Opportunity Global is a learning and development company. So what we focus on primarily is what I call human skills. So if I could, I would ban the word soft skills. I think it really undervalues and undermines how important these skills are. So whether that's a leader who is being a very conscious and intentional leader with how they're showing up in the workplace, right the way through to our contributors in the workplace, making sure that we are demonstrating those really inherent human skills like great communication, empathy, how we give and receive feedback, having the difficult conversations that sometimes keep people awake at night. So me and my team go into organizations and we design and deliver learning interventions to support around those kind of core human skills. But we typically do it in quite high tech and engineering organizations where sometimes the people stuff has been not devalued necessarily, but it's maybe not been as prioritized from a learning perspective. They've really dug deep on the technical stuff, and then lo and behold, they promote someone and they find themselves in a situation where they're leading a team and they're not sure how to navigate that. So I don't believe we need any more accidental managers and leaders in the world. We want people who are showing up intentionally, who are really conscious and thoughtful in the way that they do that. And so I want to help make sure there's more of those people in the world.
I think that resonates with me. In the legal profession, that happens all the time. You enter people like me. I'm running a business, but I'm a lawyer, and you tend to be promoted either because you're good at winning work or you're good at doing work. The other stuff sort of taken for granted, you'll be able to find your way through it. And it's always like it's not as important. Well, actually, it's the most important thing. But yes, I agree that word soft skills, I think puts quite a lot of people off because they think it's something wishy-washy, it's
fluffy.
Whereas actually it's the hard skills, it's the things that you really need to be able to manage. So where do you think this passion's come from, this passion for learning and curiosity?
I think I've always, as a kid, I always wanted to explore new places, new things, learn about new people. Books were a big thing for me as a kid. I'm a big fan of TED Talks. So the fact that we can, I know there is a lot of digital exclusion in the world, but generally speaking, quite a lot of people now do have some sort of device to be able to access something like a TED Talk where, you can, you know, explore learning in a free way. And I mean, gosh, you can go down a rabbit hole of every possible topic you could think of. So I think I've always been really passionate about that. And something that my mum really definitely did for me as a child was she really kind of supported and invested in my education, because that was something that she hadn't had a great education, and it had really kind of damaged her, you know, her childhood, her upbringing, and it really affected her. So one of the things she was really keen to do was, no matter what happened, she wanted me to have a great education. So she always encouraged me to be learning, be curious. I remember she went back to university when I was probably maybe 10 or 11, and I would be like in the university library. She'd never been to uni before, but she'd love to have gone. So she went to as an adult. And I would be like doing my schoolwork in the university library while she was doing her dissertation. And so that kind of, the power of learning in education was really ingrained in me, I think.
And did you always want to set up your own business?
Yeah, I did. So even as a kid, I mean, actually for a while I wanted to be what I said was a banister, but I meant a barrister. But I couldn't say it for some reason. So I'd always been, I'd kind of had thought about that maybe, and I studied law at uni. But I'd always wanted to have my own business, but I just didn't know what doing or what in. But I liked the idea of being in control of my own destiny. And I really like the idea of like nurturing and developing talent and having people as part of a team, being part of something. So even at uni, I would be like, I had like a cleaning little gig that I was running, and I had got a few more other people helping me do it. So then I was paying their wages, and it was just all, you know, great when people were, you know, that point in uni where people need to clean their house before they get an inspection. That was like gold dust time for us.
Like the Alan Sugar?
Yeah, I wish. But it really helped me to be able to get through uni, right, financially. Yeah. And I had another job as well. So I'd always wanted to like look at how to make money and how to do different things. But I was really clear that I wanted to work for different businesses first, because I didn't know what that meant or looked like. So I wanted a company, but I didn't know what it would be. So I wanted to work in a corporate, work in a larger SME, work in a kind of more startup scaling business, just to get a sense of how all that kind of worked before I went off and tried it myself. Yeah.
So did you do that? Did you go and be employed for a bit and
yes,
see what that was
like?
Yes,
I did. And, you know, I loved it. And I do think in the different places I went, I was successful in them. But I was also very, very thoughtful and mindful of the kind of role modeling I saw around leadership. And I had some fantastic role models, some incredible leaders, but I also had some absolutely shocking ones as well. And I think that really definitely cemented in my mind that there was this opportunity to do something where people could develop these skills. And yes, we can have high performing teams, they're financially very successful, but if we haven't got the people stuff as well, actually that doesn't last very long. It's not hugely sustainable. So my first business I actually ever started, like proper business, was a consultancy business. So I'd been working in a global team as an ops director, traveling all over the world, projects in Africa, Thailand, St. Lucia, which was probably the most glamorous office I've ever had in my life and maybe ever, India. And the business that I then set up was, you know, much more kind of UK focused, but always with the intention of how can I maybe find a way to keep that traveling bit going. So the first business was a graduate development company, because I'd gone the graduate route on a grad program. And what frustrated me was when you were doing well on your graduate program, I mean, at that point in time, I was the second top performer in the company, and I was on the grad scheme, and I wasn't obviously being paid anywhere near what anyone else was. But in terms of financial that I was bringing in, I was the second highest performer in the company, and I was like deeply frustrated. I got amazing bonuses. I managed to buy a flat on the Teesside with them. It was amazing. But my actual basic salary and the opportunities for me to progress weren't there, because they didn't have that infrastructure in place. So the first business I had was, okay, can we go into businesses and actually design and deliver their grad programs for them? which was really good fun. And we did that for quite a few years. And then it's kind of developed and morphed into supporting much broader populations than just grads.
And you've worked, in the work that you do, you work with SMEs, you work with FTSE 100s, you've worked with lots of different types of business.
Yeah.
Do you think the issues are the same, or do you think they're different?
I think they all like to think they're very unique and very different. I think fundamentally, some of the kind of core challenges that I'm seeing in organisations and teams are very, very similar. So I think there's a lot of challenges where people are afraid to have those difficult conversations sometimes, or where people have shifted from being maybe friend and peer to being now the leader of that team. How do they do that transition successfully? What does that look like for them now? I think also people sometimes get quite caught up in, the various different profiling tools that are out there, which yes, absolutely have their place, but we can get so obsessed with what my preference is, what my style of leadership is, when actually your style of leadership is you. So let's really focus on who you are and how you want to show up in the workplace, and then build around that, rather than you feeling like you have to fit into a certain mold, which I think at times in my career, I felt like I had to, because I didn't know any better maybe.
Yeah.
I thought that there was a certain way you had to behave or perform as a manager or leader to be successful, particularly when I was working in more corporate, very male-dominated environments. I didn't always necessarily have role models around me who were much more kind of the heart-centered, thoughtful leadership that I love now and hope that I demonstrate with my team and the people around me. And, you don't always get it right, okay? It's a learning and evolving thing. But I don't think I always had that. So that definitely, makes you think that you have to perform a certain way or be a certain thing or fit into a certain box. And I've never been very good at fitting into one box.
Me neither. So you mentioned there, obviously, as a woman in male-dominated environments, when you work with leaders now in businesses, do you see a difference between how men and women lead compared to when you were starting off?
Good question. I think it definitely is changing. I think there's challenges right now that obviously we're all aware of, with rollback, particularly around D&I initiatives globally. I'm definitely seeing that with some of the organizations we work with, particularly in the US. So that is having a change. I think what I see mostly is I do believe, and maybe I'm an eternal optimist, but I believe that most people, regardless of gender, are wanting to do a good job. I don't believe people actively go into the workplace thinking, I want to upset people, or at least the majority don't, right? But I don't know if we as a society set people up for success very well, because we're not taught this stuff in school. We're not taught it even if you do go into higher education. How to have a difficult conversation with someone is such a critical skill in personal life or professional life, but I don't think anyone's ever really shown how to do that successfully. So things like that, I think, are genderless in terms of what they, how people can show up. But I definitely still see differences in different organizations. I think there's a lot of challenges still at the moment where people are sharing with me, particularly where we've done like culture development work, very misogynistic behavior coming through, where I think some of what's happening in the world politically is maybe emboldening some people to feel that they are okay to say those things or to behave in those ways. So I think that's something that all of us have a responsibility to be, managing those problematic behaviors appropriately and doing something about it. I see too many organizations still brushing things under the carpet, hoping it'll go away. But the poison of the patriarch is back with a vengeance. And we need to be really, really thoughtful in how, as leaders, we're showing up and how we're supporting people to navigate that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it feels like, that for some people the shackles are off and it's now open season and we can say what we want. It's free speech and we can behave in whatever way we wanted to do, because what was wrong with that in the first place? And I do think we have a responsibility as leaders to make sure that in our own organisations and within our own sphere of influence, we make sure that people don't behave in that way.
Yeah.
Because I think the majority of people, certainly in my business, that's not what they want out of their working life,
course.
to come to a place like that where people behave like that. But we can't solve all the world's problems, unfortunately.
No, and you and I do end up talking a lot about this kind of stuff, and we quite haven't got the solution yet, have we, Jill?
But it'll come. So yeah, one of the things you've mentioned a couple of times is travel. And I'm a big fan of travel, for opening your mind, being curious, finding out how people do things in different ways in different places. You've had you've lived in different countries, and you've worked in different countries as well. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences and what you've learned from them?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. At the start of this year, or it might have been the end of last year, I actually counted up how many countries I'd worked in, just because I'm a bit of a geek like that, and I was thinking I should maybe put them on a map. So I've actually worked in 10 different countries, which is crazy, across 4 continents. And that was something that I was always really keen to do in any work I had. Like, how can I also work but maximize the opportunity to travel as well? So any opportunity to do it, I was like, yes, I'll go.
But it's quite difficult, that, because actually, people think travelling for work is glamorous. But a lot of the time when you travel for work, you only see the inside of airports and hotels, and you don't see the nice parts of things.
That is true.
So that's quite a strategic
Yes.
aim to have when you...
It was, yeah, definitely. I mean, so as a kid, I didn't go abroad. Like, that wasn't something that was possible for us. I didn't get on my first plane till I was well into kind of later as a teen. But then as soon as I did, I was like, oh, okay, this is for me. So I went off on my own, firstly, to Africa. I wanted to go traveling. I'd saved up for a good chunk of months to be able to do that. But I knew when I was going, I didn't want it to be a bit of a jolly and spend all the money that I'd saved and that was it. I wanted to work and do something purposeful while I was there. So
Africa's an odd choice, though, for you, a young person thinking, oh, I fancy doing a bit of travelling on my own.
Yeah.
I'll go to Africa.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. When I think now, my poor mum, I remember her dropping me off at Newcastle Airport with like my backpack and all my stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'll be totally fine, Mum. It's okay. And she's like, you are literally going to Africa on your own. It's okay that I'm a bit nervous for you. But I knew that if I did it in a way that would make me feel safe, I could maximize it. So I got myself a job with the Red Cross. So that would allow me then to at least have a bit of a safety net while I was there, because I lived in a volunteer house with other people. I got to know other people, and then it allowed me to kind of continue my traveling journey. So I started in just outside of Cape Town. So I worked in a children's hospital in Rondebosch, and lived in a place called Fishhook, which was just beautiful on the beach. And I used to have to get 2 trains and then walk to where I worked. And I mean, even that experience was just absolutely fascinating and completely so far removed from growing up in Borough that was just amazing. And I just loved learning about other people and understanding like different nuances in how we were growing up and how we lived and our perspectives. And yeah, I just found the whole thing amazing. It was really tough though. I mean, working in that sort of environment was very challenging. I remember there was loads of stories where I just couldn't tell anyone back home what was actually going on, because I think that someone would have probably tried to get me to come home, and I was like, absolutely not. Yeah. I remember the hospital went into full lockdown one day because there was an active shooter outside on the premises. I'm not sure I've actually told my mum that story, so I hope she doesn't watch this. But, that was terrifying, being there on your own and just dealing with that sort of situation. I was mugged on my way to work at knife point. I used to keep muggers' money like in my pocket, and then I'd have anything of any value in my bra. Yeah, it opened my eyes definitely to the world, but none of it ever put me off wanting to continue to travel on my own. And I think the reason I did it on my own was, and this is probably something that, thinking about the name of the podcast, Fearless, Do More, I've never waited for someone else to give me permission to do something or to come on that journey with me. Because there was loads of times where friends said, oh, I'll come traveling, I'll do something. And they never saved any money. They never did it to, so I've always just been like, actually, if it's something I want to do, I have to find a way to make that happen, whether it is me doing it on my own or not.
So how long were you in South Africa for?
So that first time, I think about 6 months, and then I went off and travelled through Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and then I have been to other parts of Africa and worked since. But that was kind of that stint, yeah.
So out of all of the places that you've worked abroad, which one either is your favourite or sticks in your mind the most?
Yeah. I think the one that sticks in my mind the most is probably India, because from a cultural perspective, it was just a massive shock to the system. And particularly at the time, I was obviously younger. I was actually blonde at the time as well. And navigating that and being taken seriously was really, really difficult. I was, regularly, and one meeting always sticks in my mind, I was negotiating with the Indian government and their lawyers actually for this medical program that we were delivering out there, and we were setting it up. It was a great, thing for them in terms of we were bringing a lot of, innovation in and a lot of training and development for people. But obviously there was a lot of kind of disagreements on how it was going to happen. And I remember being in that meeting, I was the only woman, the only white person, and they immediately were asking me questions like, okay, so where is everyone else? And I was like, well, it's just me. And then it was like, okay, so is your husband with you? And I was like, oh, no, I'm not married. Okay. So they're like, okay, what about your father? Nope, funnily enough, they're not here either. And then they said, okay, do you have any brothers? I was like, yes, I've got 2, and they're older than me, which was a big win. Everyone around the room was like, yes, okay, this is good news. I was like, but they're still not with me because I'm here for work and I don't tend to bring them with me. And it just was the most unusual way of ever starting a meeting in my whole life. But it was really, really challenging because I sat there thinking, okay, if I leave this room, I'm never going to get back in this room again. And I've got to find a way to influence and negotiate with the people in this room, because this project will never happen. And actually, this project's going to make a massive impact, and it's going to be really, really important and successful to the infrastructure of how they're going to do things in the future. But I just need to get them to even have a conversation with me. And yeah, it was really difficult. Definitely the most difficult conversation I think I've ever had in a work environment. And having gone through that process, they continue to be, very, very difficult towards me. The level of sexism that I experienced was just unbelievable. Some of them wouldn't even engage or talk to me at all. People that were in my team that I was meant to be leading were very, very difficult, would openly say they didn't want to be led by me because I was a woman. And I had to find a way to overcome that. And particularly when you're on site there and then doing it remotely was really hard. So I had to have a really open and frank conversation with them, because they just did not want to be managed by me. And the end point of it was we had this really open conversation, and it was really difficult and they were very aggressive towards me, but we found a way through it by me just being really open about how they were making me feel. So I made it much less about them, more about how I was feeling. And we worked through that together. And actually the next time I flew in, they were waiting at arrivals with a bouquet of flowers to apologise for how awful it had been to me for the previous 6 months. And we actually found a way. And the really cool thing is, all these years later, that project is still running and is still working and has trained and developed literally hundreds of thousands of doctors, nurses, dentists, which is just incredible. So the ripple effect now of that is really special. And I think that's what I love about the work I do, but also when I've done volunteer things in the past as well, it's got to always be about impact. Otherwise, why are you doing it? So that so what factor is what I always come back to.
And that brings us nicely on to TEDx.
Yes.
Fear Less, Do More is brought to you by the team at Square One Law. If you're enjoying this episode, hit follow or subscribe. It really helps us out, and it means that you won't miss out on any future episodes. We have some great fearless guests that leave you feeling really inspired. And if you think someone else would enjoy it too, feel free to pass it on, whether that's a mate, a colleague, or someone in your network. Thanks for listening. Now back to the conversation.
So obviously everybody who's listening probably has heard of TEDx and has probably watched at least one TEDx video of some sort. But you decided to try and bring it to Borough.
Yes.
You're obviously from Teesside. Yeah. Where did that come from?
So like I said earlier, I've always loved TED Talks because I like the fact that it's accessible learning for the most part. I like this idea about making learning as much as we can, like accessible, free, available to people, so that it's not just saved for those that can afford it or those people who are at a certain level in an organisation or whatever. So I've always been a fan, and I was at a point in my life, I think it was like 2020, 2021. Sadly, within a period of 6 months, I lost two of my best friends. And I was very, a bit lost, really, to be honest, Jill. Really disconnected from my purpose a bit as well. I just felt like, what am I doing this for? What's the point? And COVID and all of that stuff had been going on. I felt really lonely as well, quite isolated. And so I thought, right, you need to get yourself out of this. What are we going to do? And I thought, okay, I need to be in a space where I've just got, again, a bit of curiosity needed to be sparked again, wanted to be in that environment of learning, wanted to be around new people. And I thought, wouldn't a TED conference be a really cool way to do it? But you can't just buy a ticket, Jill, for the ones in America, the big TED conferences. You've got to apply, which I just never even knew, just to attend.
Right.
So I went through that application process, and by some miracle I got through. And, at that point I was in the position to be able to invest in that ticket, invest in, being there, being away from the business, all of that sort of stuff. And it literally just blew me away. Like, from the moment you get there, the experience starts. Like, it's just incredible. Like, they really do make a really great event. And the people that I got to meet, I was sat next to Rihanna's foundation manager, Billie Jean King's assistant. It was just crazy. And that isn't to be name droppy. It's more to just give the context of how was Michaela from Borough ever even in the room with these people, right? And I love that about it. And there was real magic, real learning. The best bits were having the conversations in the queue for coffee with people. Literally all day, every day, you were talking about really important stuff that was going on in the world and innovations, which I just love to be around. And I met an amazing group of friends who I'm friends for life. We still connect with on Zoom every month and still support each other, which is really amazing. But what I was also very aware of was the privilege I have to even be in that room. And what I didn't like so much about it, I understand why they do it, but that exclusive part, it felt a little bit uncomfortable at times, just in terms of, okay, how do we make this, again, more accessible to more people, to have that bit of magic that I had? Because it allowed me to expand my business into the US, all of that kind of great stuff. So I was like, okay, how could we bring that magic back to Teesside? And of course, everyone immediately was like, no one in Teesside is going to give a shit about TEDx, why are you bothering? Just keep enjoying the conferences. Why are you making it more difficult for yourself? But I was like, no, why not? Why can't people in Teesside have this same exposure, this same opportunity to share their stories, share their ideas? And I think too often our regional towns in particular do get left behind. We don't have the same access to the big venues and events, and the cost of that and the time to travel, etc., is always quite difficult. So previously TEDx was only in kind of Manchester and Newcastle with the closest ones. So I thought, why don't we give it a go and try and bring just a little bit of that magic that I'd experienced that really impacted my life back to my hometown.
I mean, because there's some quite shocking statistics around
Middlesbrough,
and you started off with TEDx Teesside, was TEDx Teesside Women. partly because of the awful statistics around being the worst place in Britain to be born a girl.
Yeah.
And I think it's something quite offensive almost, that people think, oh, people in Teesside wouldn't be interested in TEDx. And actually what you found is completely the opposite.
Absolutely.
So that you've got the wonderful Ben Peachy who compares the day. Where did you come across Ben?
Really good question. Gosh, it's so long now that I can't think. So Ben and we were introduced by their kind of PR manager person, I think, years ago. Got to know each other through then, and we just literally instantly connected and clicked. And they really liked the mission because they're from a very small town in Yorkshire and had experienced some of the same things I had in terms of that feeling of being like a little bit isolated from the rest of the world, maybe not getting the same opportunities that other people did in the kind of more major cities and things. So I think that was one of the things that immediately hooked them into one of our missions, really. So it came through from there. And I was really keen to make sure that our event, there is great representation there, and it is diverse and it is welcoming, and that people feel that they can have a voice, and can share their ideas with the world and have that global stage. And that for me is just really exciting. So Ben from day one got behind the mission and has been a great support.
And are you surprised at how successful it has been?
Do you know what? No. I know that sounds a bit cocky, but no, I always knew. And again, it's about being intentional with what you do.
Yeah.
I knew if I gave my passion, my energy, my commitment to it, I knew it would be successful. I knew we'd find a way to do it. I'm very persistent when I need to be. And I think I knew that it would, because all I had in the back of my head was 13-year-old Michaela growing up in Middlesbrough, who would have loved the opportunity to have gone to something like that. I knew that if I could create something that would have really inspired me at that age, right the way through to the age I am now, I felt like we could connect with people in that same way. So no, I'm not surprised, but the one thing I am surprised about is how far people have taken their commitment to making it come back year after year, because I wasn't sure quite how that part would land, but very quickly we've created a very engaged community of people who are willing to volunteer their time or sponsor or support, buy a ticket, spread the word. So it already feels like what I wanted it to be, which was, by the community for the community. It shouldn't be the Michaela show. That was never my intention. But it's okay that I'm leading to make it happen, because if I don't, then who is going to, right? Yeah. But now it's already evolving into something much more than that, which is really cool. But it was always the intention to start with TEDx Women, because, we do know that there's a lot of challenges in Teesside, particularly for, you've mentioned some of the stats. And it really, really pisses me off. As someone who was grew up in Middlesbrough, it just immediately makes some people start to think, well, why bother? It really affects people's thoughts around like that deprivation of aspiration sometimes, or, okay, well, what are we fighting against here? People aren't even giving us a chance, We have one of the lowest life expectancies for women in the UK. We have the highest rates of teenage pregnancy and lots of other complex issues. But on the flip side of that, there's an amazing amount of people who are coming together to change some of this. I'm not naive enough to think a TEDx can do that. That's not what I'm trying to do. But what I hope is, it is giving a voice to those people who are doing the great work on the ground to make things change and happen. And let's get that message out globally. Let's make sure people do know where Teesside is on a map, and also what the great things are that are going on. So they don't just see the doom and gloom of the headlines. Because we had this one terrible journalist, national press journalist, who kept coming to Middlesbrough and created a series of TikTok videos just slating the town. And it was so damaging. And every time you go on to kind of socials and look for Middlesbrough, that's the first thing people were seeing. Whereas now, one of the first things they see is TEDx. And I love that, even just as a bit of a ripple of impact, so that people aren't just seeing the doom and gloom and the not so nice stories that some journalists used to put out there.
As you said, the TEDx has grown and it's transitioning. So you were TEDx Women.
Yes.
Now you're just going to be TEDx Teesside. What's the rationale behind that?
So I think there's a couple of things. So TEDx Teesside generally is like a more broader brand, is that my hope is we can bring in other experiences over the next few years, with the right funding and things in place. So I wanted to also make sure that we were just keeping our doors very open and broad to everyone. Now, my intention with TEDx Women was always that it was open to everyone. It was never just exclusively for women. We really worked hard to engage male allies to be in the room, our non-binary community. It was always about having everyone together, but some of the core ideas were focused on women. And I just think I really struggled to get allies in the room. I really struggled actually to get some sponsors to sponsor us because of having the word women in the title. And so I really had to think about, okay, what is our actual mission and how can we still focus on that mission, but maybe make it just psychologically be maybe more open to people. So we decided to go down the route of being TEDx Teesside, but our more progressive programming and our diversity is still core of what we do. So we haven't changed, same message, same focus. We're just making sure that people know we want everyone at the table. We don't want it just to be an isolated conversation for women, because actually some of the big challenges and issues that we want to table on our stage, we need everyone to be part of the conversation for it to really change. And I think hopefully this might be a way for us to do that. The other ambition I have is to do a TEDx Youth at some point. So I'm scoping that at the moment to hopefully do that in 2026. So again, making it TEDx Teesside allows us to bring in these other kind of brands within, and kind of sub-brands to attract and engage young people. So TEDx Youth is a big passion of mine, because when I was a kid, I was very fortunate that a teacher saw something in me, and my mum really encouraged me to do kind of speech and drama type stuff. And this teacher had me going around doing like competitions and standing up and doing poetry and things. And at the time I hated it because I was really bullied, like from the kids on my street, because no one in Borough did that kind of thing. But the things that taught me, the confidence, the courage it gave me to kind of stand on stage and do that kind of thing has really helped me in every part of my career. And I think those oracy skills are something that even the government have recognised is something that we need to really hone in on and develop in young people. And so I think it'd be really cool to have more young people on the stage sharing their stories and ideas that we can all learn from. And it'd be really interesting to see where those ideas go in the future as well. So,
and I know the day before, the sort of rehearsal day for TEDx, you invite along lots of school children, community groups to experience that. Is that what sparked the interest in the youth bit? Were people saying to you, well, I would have liked to have done one of these?
Yeah, so my favourite story of that is a 4-year-old who actually, they came because their mum and now their grandma have been on our TEDx stage, which is so cool. So they got to see all this happen. So Liz Atkin, who was one of our speakers last year, it was her grandson, he came up at the end of the thing and his mum said, tell Michaela what you just said to me. And he said, when I'm 7, I think I want to do a TED Talk, because now I've seen it all happen and it looks really cool. And I was like, yes, that's my impact. That's my one bit of impact if we do nothing else. So Finch will one day hopefully be on our TEDx stage. But it really just made me think, yes, like this is exciting and inspiring. And not everyone wants to be on stage, right? That's fine. But it's more that opportunity is available to people if they want it. That's the bit that we want to really hone in on.
And so for people who are interested in going to TEDx Teesside this year, when is it happening?
So October 16th, and then the day before will be our dress rehearsal day. So there'll be free tickets as well, again this year. So if anyone is part of a community group or charity listening and would like free tickets, then that opportunity is there as well. And then our tickets are on sale. So maybe we can put in the show notes a link or something for people to find out more. And the cool thing is we do bring out people from outside of the area. So the intention always is that we want to, yes, platform ideas here, but we also want to learn from other people. So half of our speakers are from the Northeast, half are from outside of the region, so that we can continue that kind of curiosity as well.
Yeah. Otherwise, you reinforce an echo chamber.
Yeah,
you've got to get some diversity into that from all different aspects. I think that's really important. Let's just talk about you a little bit.
Ooh.
So, this podcast is called Fearlessness.
Yeah.
And from the conversation we've had so far, I don't get any sense that you have been fearful in taking any of these sort of big steps. Often when I talk to people, it's about, they've started a business and that's been a big step for them. They've had to confront lots of fears of failure, all of that sort of stuff. In a way, I get the sense from you that it's almost in reverse, that you are frightened of just doing a bog standard day-to-day living. That was probably more fearful than actually doing lots of different things, going to different countries, traveling in Africa. Is that a correct perception?
I think so. I mean, I think it'd be wrong for me to say I've never been fearful, of course, but I tend to be fearful, like almost after the fact. Like I like being uncomfortable. I like putting myself in situations that I've not been in before, because I truly believe that's when I'll actually learn something. And, I've failed loads of times. I've had a failed business that I had to close. I've, failed at so many different points in time, but there's something in me that just, I always come back to, well, why not me? Why not give it a go and see what happens? Like, what is the worst that will happen, right? And then that's always my starting point. So then I kind of worry about the rest afterwards, I
think that's it's really interesting that you've developed that mindset. And I'm not sure, do you know where that's come from? Is that something that you saw in a role model or?
Yeah, I don't think I saw it in a role model necessarily. No, I can't think of one. I think there's some things that I experienced as a child which were very, very challenging. And I think that really made me very thoughtful about the fact that, like, we have one life. This isn't a dress rehearsal. And, if you don't put yourself in those situations, you will never know what you could be capable of. And I've just always had that in the back of my mind, that I need to try things. And I'm someone who likes doing lots of things, as you can probably tell. Like, I'm multi-passionate. I can't just do one thing. And so I think that's just always kept me going. But I think definitely a big turning point for me was in my early 20s when I got very seriously ill. And I have a heart condition that had been undiagnosed. So I was actually born with it. But in the 80s, they didn't do the same level of screening. And so I was lying in that hospital bed, really kind of for the first time in my life processing your own mortality and what that looks like. I just thought, I've got to give it the best shot I have, because it's a privilege to still be here, Jill. So 15 years later, just actually last week, my last surgery that I had, every day that I'm still here, I've got to do something with it.
Obviously, I don't know whether you're aware, I've had cancer twice, so I completely resonate. That resonates with me, and it's certainly what my experience has been. Is that it doesn't make you live each day like it's your last.
No.
And I always say to people, if that was the case, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah.
Pub.
Or on holiday all the time.
It's that, so it does make you very focused on the things that are very important to you.
Yes.
And very intolerant of things that don't add anything to your life.
Yes,
so you tend to,
yeah.
you know, you do. But so I do think that, and I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that story, and thank you for sharing. And I know that's obviously it's not an easy thing to talk about, but I think you're absolutely right. When you're faced with your own mortality, you'll look at the rest of your life in a very, very different way.
Definitely, and I think it's made me more intentional. And even when things have been really difficult, and when you have, you know, when you do go through those moments of feeling like a failure or anything like that, I've still never experienced anything like that moment. And I do think it really helped me to understand what I do want from life, but also got much, much clearer on what I don't want as well. And I think that's why, like, me and my partner say, like, we leave nothing for retirement. You know, we've gone and spent winters in Portugal and worked remotely, and we've created a life to allow us to do that, because I don't know what the future might look like. None of us do, right? No. But I do know that, you know, there are complexities because of my health. And there's certain things that I can't do because of my health. And so I think that makes me even more hell-bent on doing the things that I can do to the, like, most extreme that I can because of that, maybe. So I think that's definitely one about that fearlessness bit. But yeah, I just think life is like, it's a privilege to be here. I think the other part that, you know, losing 2 friends in that quick succession, and one in particular who was my bestest friend, and losing them in that way again, every year I get older that they don't, again, it's a privilege. I'm 40 in October. I can't wait to be 40. You know, friends around me are like, oh no, we're 40 this year. And I'm like, yeah, bring it on. Like, this is so much fun.
Till you wait till you get to 50, it's even better.
Exactly, so I hear. And I love that. I'm here for it. And over the course of my life, I intend to do lots of interesting, different things and put myself in awkward, difficult situations, because they have always been my best learning opportunities. And they've always been the times when I've met the most fascinating people or had the most curious conversations, you know. So yeah, that's what I plan to do more of.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, keep being fearless. Do all those things that you want to do. And thank you so much for sharing your story. A very personal and a very business orientated and practical discussion we've had, but I do appreciate your honesty and your openness today.
Yeah, no, so thank you for having me. It was really good fun. And thank you for just being so gorgeous and gracious in how you, like, create this safe space. It makes it very easy to be a guest.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Fearless, Do More, brought to you by Square One Law. If you found today's conversation inspiring or interesting, we've added a recommendation for what to listen to next. That's either on the screen now or in the show notes. Take care, and we'll see you next time.